Stoop Kid.
Stoop Kid sitting on the stoop. Hi, this is Melissa from Hapa Mag. We are doing an In Conversation. This is an audio post that we're doing for December. And I'm literally sitting on a stoop in New York. Stoop Kid with Jonathan Castanien.
Hey!
And we did this audio because we're both podcasters and we're here to talk about podcasting. You'd think we'd have better recording equipment, but I kind of messed up, so forgive me. So sorry, my bad.
Nah, it's all good. It's all good.
So Jonathan, tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, my podcast is called Not So Ancient, not so Asian, which a lot of people keep hearing, but it's Not So Ancient. And I host it with Peter J. Kuo. And basically, we just go through the Asian American theater canon, and we read plays and talk about basically like a book club. And the goal of it was to really examine plays written before 2008 and kind of expose that we've had a canon, that we have a history of plays and we have a history in theater, and that these playwrights should be read more, and hopefully we can like spread the word on these playwrights to people in our own community or even those in the greater theater community.
Nice. As a fellow podcaster, do you have like a one-line elevator pitch?
What? No.
It's hard, right?
It's super hard. I don't know. I guess, what would I say?
Hold on. For people listening, to not promote my own podcast just now, I host a podcast called We're Not All Ninjas. This is my elevator pitch. It is a movie review podcast focused on Asian American representation in Hollywood film. One sentence, all encompassing.
I guess not.
It's hard.
It's hard. I mean, what do I write on one of the descriptions? I think it's like Not So Ancient is an examination of the Asian American theater canon.
Perfect.
There we go.
Aww. So, and I also forgot to ask you, because I never ask and Alex always asks, what is your mix?
What is my mix? So I'm Chinese, Vietnamese, and German. My dad is white. The Castanien family goes back many, many generations. I think to Illinois or Indiana, one of the I states. I don't know. And then my mom is from Vietnam. She was born in Saigon, and she's mixed Chinese Vietnamese, which I found out. I thought growing up, first I thought I was just Vietnamese. Then my mom's like, "Oh, I'm half Chinese," so I'm like, "Oh, so I'm like quarter." And then a few months ago when I went home, my family's like, "Yeah, we're pretty much like 75% Chinese," and I'm like, what? Why are you guys withholding this information? Like, in 5 years, I'm gonna find out like they're just Chinese.
You're just ethnically Chinese?
Just ethnically Chinese.
Oh my god.
I swear it's gonna happen.
How has it like vastly changed your identity? Because like for me as a Hapa, it's so important to be like, I'm Japanese and I'm this, and I like cling to the things that I like inherited or that I grew up with.
Right.
And there's also this thing in America where it's like Asian American is a wash, but like it's a huge part of your identity. Like,
yeah, I think luckily it hasn't really changed how I view myself, because I think at the end of the day, like my family is culturally Vietnamese. Like, cool. That is what I know. That is what they taught me. That is what we are. We just happen to be ethnically Chinese, more so with every decade that I live. But yeah, I firmly commit myself to like the Vietnamese identity in terms of that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, you and I, before we sat on this stoop, you and I were talking about how, as Hapas, we create Asian products in Asian spaces. But because we're not full Asian, we sometimes get backlash and push. And you were telling me about this thing you went to called Arts Equity, where you talked about that? Yeah,
Art Equity is this facilitator training program that provides tools, resources, and a network for the intersection of arts and activism, which is the shortest way to explain it. And in our training, so we're like a very big, like 34-member cohort, and we broke up into affinity groups. So a segment of us decided to make a mixed race group, since we had a lot of Hapas, we had like Latinx, white mixed man, we had some Arab white women. So like it was very much mixed. So we broke into groups and we were asked certain questions to answer. And through our conversations, I think a lot of us had the same feelings about how we were viewed in our communities, and whether or not like we ever feel accepted in either, I guess. I think the thing that I know I brought up in the group was also when we're determined worthy of being part of the group. So like if we're successful, sometimes we get lifted up by that community. Mm-hmm. And then there's other times where we are achieving something, but then we're pushed back down because we're not, quote unquote, enough. So I found that interesting. And I think a lot of us also struggle with that feeling on a constant basis, like day to day. Are we really allowed to make these spaces? Are we really allowed to speak for this community? And I know it varies between different mixes. It varies between different communities. I feel personally the Asian American theater community, but Asian American community for the most part is pretty welcoming of mixed race kids and Hapas. But I know like some communities it's not. And that's something we talked about too, where like people who are mixed, black and white, they get subjugated to just black, or they're not, or there's colorism and they're not seen as black enough, whatever that means.
Did you feel as a half Asian that it would be weird for you to make this piece that is focused on full Asians?
Okay. It never crossed my mind while I was making it, or when we decided to do it.
And it honestly didn't cross my mind until we decided to interview you for Hapa Mag, and then I was like, oh, this is what we do. Yeah.
I think also because Asian Americans have been accepting of us in that community. It hasn't crossed my mind a whole lot until you brought it up. And we talked about it.
So maybe we're just a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I mean, it is. So like the thing is, I feel, and this is something I've felt before, creating these spaces and doing this work and supporting that community, the Asian American community, because that's what I have identified with. It is a way for us to build a space for Hapas and mixed people, because otherwise we don't really have that space quite yet.
Same, feeling the same.
I think we're not, or we're still like figuring it out. And I think, and we said this in my training at Art Equity, it's like our existence complicates the discussion about race. Like us just being around just makes it complicated.
We're the gray area.
Yeah, we're like, no one really knows. And I think that's where a lot of like issues and trauma and discoveries are born out of for us, because it is gray. It is kind of messy. No one's really sure. So we haven't quite reached a point where we as a community have a space, and I don't know if we'd even, I don't want to say we're not allowed to have a space.
I think we're allowed. I mean, Hapa Mag is a space. We So Hapa is a space. Like, your affinity group is a space. I think we're definitely allowed to have groups. And I think it's important for us to have the groups within the groups, because we are like a double minority. Yeah. So,
and it's, and the thing too is that as a community, I think we still need to figure out how to band together. Yeah. We still need to find each other. Like, I barely had anyone else growing up who is mixed race, which is weird because I'm from California. You'd think there'd be more.
Alex is too, and she had the same issue though.
I didn't feel like I met a lot of them until I moved to New York, which is so strange.
Same.
It's so bizarre. New York is filled with Hapas.
It really is. Also, Washington Heights is filled with Hapas, for the record.
Oh, really?
Yeah, come to Washington Heights. Literally everyone lives up in Washington Heights. I'm going to cut that out so no one can find me.
Gonna get some stalkers.
Beep. What's your favorite episode of your podcast that you've recorded?
Oh, that's like asking your favorite child.
I hate when people ask me, like, oh, what episode should I listen to start? And I'm like, what movie have you seen? Like, start with that one, because I spoil the entire movie. If you haven't seen Infinity War, don't listen to our Infinity War episode. I will spoil it immediately. No, we did take care to put up a spoiler wall. I spoiled Searching, though, within the first, 3 minutes of the podcast with no spoiler wall.
Well, I mean, people should know what they're getting into when they start listening. I mean, our podcast is, I always wonder about this too. It's still pretty new as well, but our plays, they're not as accessible as movies, especially
Right.
The older plays we're reading is something we're discovering that they're really hard to find, and sometimes we can't read certain plays from the 70s because no one published them.
Oh, that's interesting.
I know, that's a conversation I've had with Peter about what does that mean? So if that playwright's gone, how do you find those plays? What happens to those plays
Yeah.
for the future? Are they just not around anymore? Yeah. So it's maybe is that erasure? What's happening? My favorite. Okay. Only because it was really fun to record. It was also we were at Kata in Chicago, and it was late, and if you ever been to a conference or festival, you know the schedule is insane. You're up at 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning, and then you're out until 1 in the morning.
Yep.
So you barely sleep, and you're constantly going. And I recorded an episode with our friend Nicholas Pillipil, who is a producer playwright in Los Angeles that Peter and I both know. We did an episode around Che Yu's A Language of Their Own, and we were just
Wait.
over the place. And,
You did an episode about Che Yu's play when
Wow,
Che Yu was
Chicago,
at
right?
Kata, and we were at Che's theater at the Victory Gardens.
It could have planned
And
it
Che
any
didn't
better.
come in?
No, he would never do that. But just Nicholas and Peter and I, it was just silly and goofy and a little punch drunk. And I think that's what made it really fun to record. And then Nicholas also had this really nice heartfelt moment at the end for Peter and I, which if you listen to the episode, you hear.
Which I'll link. Don't worry. Cool.
Oh.
So what do you like about podcasting? And why do you think that... I'll make two-part question. What do you like about podcasting? Do you think that podcasting is a good platform for Hapas? Because I want to interview... There's a couple other Hapa podcasters that I'm going to interview, not just for this issue, but an ongoing project for myself, because I love podcasting so much. And I think it's, in my world, not to feed you an answer, but in my mind, it's a wonderfully democratic way for us to get things out there. It's what made YouTube so successful for Asian YouTubers, because you didn't have to go through the bamboo ceiling to get your stuff out. You could just put it out there. And podcasts, I mean, that's a double-edged sword, but it's a very similar thing.
Yeah, I think, the thing I like is having the conversations with Peter and with whoever our guest is. I think that's some of the best parts, is just kind of hashing it out. Really, I mean, basically we do this with or without a microphone in our lives. We sit down and we end up...
This is our average bar talk.
we just talk about plays or movies, entertainment, and look at it through our lenses of race and all these different things. And I think that's some of the best parts. And sometimes it's I've noticed that we're enjoying the conversation so much, and the last few episodes we've recorded that we're going way over an hour, and I'm oh no, it's so long now. We need to monitor ourselves better. But I like that, and I also like that through our podcast where we have guests, so we're also introducing our guests to these plays that they haven't read either. So that has been really fun, and also just discovering these plays that are, I mean, these plays from the 70s that are, and 80s that are same level as Arthur Miller. I think I say this all the time on my podcast. They're same level as Arthur Miller. Why aren't they being done?
I have an episode on our podcast where we did a panel, and I was what? Can we retire some of these old white dudes?
Just give them a little break.
Well, is Arthur Miller really that great? It's
all right.
It's all right. But I mean, I love Crucible, don't get me wrong, but
Right.
there's some things in the American theater canon that I think don't age well, can be retired. And when I say don't age well, the American theater canon in and of itself is so young
Yeah.
It's like, it's not 400 years old like Shakespeare. It's only a couple of decades when you really think about it.
Yeah, as we know it, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So can we retire some of these plays that don't do as well and then insert plays like Che Yu's plays or Frank Chin's plays and start making those more of the backbone?
Yeah.
Also Phil Gotanda's plays, because I love Phil.
Or Wakako.
I haven't read that one.
She's good. She started as like she wrote books and short stories,
Right.
so her writing's very poetic in that way.
I like that.
Yeah, I like her. But yeah, and is it a good platform for Hapas? I think what you said was right. I think it is a way for us to just make content and push it out and have no real limitations on it besides if people listen to it or not. And I think it is good for Hapas in a way that other Hapas and mixed kids out there can find these things and listen to these conversations and feel like they're being talked about, or that they do have a place in these communities and that they are able to talk about it with agency.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I'm going to end this conversation on the stoop.
Stoop kids.
Stoop kids, not a stoop. So thank you for listening, and I hope you guys enjoyed. And maybe we'll make this a running Hapa Mag thing. Maybe not, we'll see. But flip through the rest of our articles. Let us know what you think. Comment, tweet, all of that. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.